Round one goes to Troy Balderson, we think. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Darrell Rowland, Public Affairs Editor for the Columbus Dispatch. Julie Carr-Smythe, State House Correspondent for the Associated Press. Terry Casey, Republican strategist, and Janetta King of Innovation Ohio. Pollsters and pundits take some heat when they are wrong. Well, this time they and we got it right. The 12th Congressional District special election was tight, within a 1-point margin, as the polls predicted. It was the suburbs versus farm country. It came down to turnout. Republican Troy Balderson claimed victory Tuesday night. Late support from President Trump, Vice President Pence, and Governor Kasich made election night a happy one for him, while Democrat Danny O'Connor did not concede defeat. Motivated Democrats and Republicans turned off by President Trump's personality and policies nearly gave O'Connor the upset. Both men know it'll be close again in November.
It's time to get to work. Over the next 3 months, I'm going to do everything I can to keep America great again. So that when we come back here in November, get ready, we got to come back here in November. I have earned your vote for a second time.
We're not stopping now. Tomorrow we rest, and then we keep fighting through to November.
Here's where the count stands. Balderson has a lead of 1,564 votes, less than 1%. But there are 8,400 possible uncounted votes still out there. Darrell, let's get to the remaining uncertainty over this election. Balderson right now has more counted votes, but there are absentees and provisionals out there. What will it take for O'Connor to surpass the election day total?
Just mathematically, he needs 57% or so of that 8,400 and change. Now, the trick is there's no way there's going to be 8,400 ballots that are remaining to be counted. That's the maximum possible. It's going to be less than that. How much less is going to be part of the trick? Some of these are provisional ballots that were taken on election day. Not all those are going to be considered valid. The rest are mail-in absentees. Those will not be counted unless they were postmarked before the election and arrive within this 10-day period that we're all kind of in now. So 57% mathematically, but he's probably got to get at least 2 out of every 3 of those votes.
If they were just in Franklin County, you'd have a
chance. Sure, because he did really well, did an impressive grassroots campaign in Franklin County. But Troy Balderson, boosted by Trump, Governor Kasich, for the vice president, pretty much almost every top-level Republican you could name. Right now, it looks like he's pulled it out.
And Darrell did a very good summary in Wednesday morning's Dispatch electronic version of sorting it out. Darrell and I did a program on Wednesday, and I was very frustrated. The national media, like CBS at 8:02 that morning after the election, proclaimed there were 8,000 provisional ballots still to be counted. And of course, that was incorrect, because I know from being on a board of elections and doing a lot of recounts around Ohio that a large percentage of these unreturned absentees are people that either got the ballot, changed their mind, something else came up, or maybe they got it too late to return it, and they might have voted provisionally. So it's going to take quite an effort, and roughly 1,200 votes is the margin that might kick it into a free recount. But most of these counties are electronic machines where you have less errors, less things to argue about than if it's a paper ballot.
Right. The Associated Press decided not to call it for the reason that we don't count elections that are going to go to this automatic recount, which it has to be 0.5%. So right now, as you said, it's about it's less than that, 0.8% or so. So it's possible that enough could come in that it would trigger that. It might not even be that many, because as both of Darrell and Terry are pointing out, O'Connor would have to have this huge number of those. I mean, he prevailed in Franklin County, which is largely Democratic. There are a number of other counties in here, I think 6 or 7 other counties in the district, and all those are, the trend Republican. That's the way it was drawn. It used to be represented by Pat Tiberi, who used to overwhelmingly win this district, sometimes by 68%, or so, and Donald Trump won the district by 11. So the narrow margin is important in that way.
So let's assume that Troy Balderson hangs on. Janetta, is this a moral victory? Is this good enough?
I am thrilled that we are talking about a race that is not yet called in a district that Trump won by 11. And that is pretty incredible. And I think that it really indicates that the blue wave is real. This is the first time that we could actually quantify it. You know, we've seen the activists rise up. We've seen, you know, the engagement in phone banking, Capitol Hill. We've seen all this energy. But the question was, what did that mean electorally? Were these people actually going to turn out? And for the first time, we can say, yes, there is something going on here. They are going to turn out.
But your candidate,
and this is
your candidate still lost. Is this the best he could do? Is to keep it close?
I think it's winnable. He was outspent about 5-1 when you look at you know, the campaigns and all of the other outside money. 5-1. The DCCC, the campaign that nationally supports congressional candidates, they got in very late here because I think everyone was wondering, is this for real? So being outspent 5-1, and he won't be outspent that much in November. I think that this is very doable for him to turn this around in November.
But let me do a Lee Corso and say, not so fast, my friend. If you look at actual candidate money, Danny raised a lot more because the Democrats did a great job of focusing money into his campaign from across the country in web donations, and he was buying as a candidate much cheaper than the outside people. And to be honest, some of these outside Republican groups that spent money did a terrible job in how they spent the money, lack of message. And I'm going to say something good about Danny. Danny and the Democrats did a better job of turning their base out. They started early. I mean, the Republicans screwed up in some of their mailings, in some of their efforts that they were supposed to do to get their vote out. So they've got a chance to make up for some of those. But I want to quote Mike Thompson at Wednesday's program at the Metropolitan Club. He said there was a Syracuse coach who once said, a win is a win is a win. And I want to second Mike's notation there.
He said a win is a win, and a win is a beautiful thing.
Okay, that's good.
But is it that beautiful when we still don't officially know who's won? And this is a district that is not just red, it's deep red.
Well, it doesn't matter that you beat expectations. You don't get seated in Congress by beating expectations or saying a second place win. It's going to be Balderson who goes to Congress and is the member of Congress.
This was a vote for a congressman, but this was also a test of the Ohio electorate. Is it the Ohio of 2016? No, definitely not, which means, you know, opened up a lot of possibilities for November.
Well, and you look at other districts around the state where Trump did not win by as many as 11 points. You know, the Steve Chabot district, you know, looking at some of these others where, and all across the country, there are dozens of these districts. Now, will the Republicans be able to afford to defend all those seats? How many will go blue if this is indeed a trend?
Vice President Joe Biden said in sort of his little post-election analysis that by his, I don't know what numbers he was using, but this sounds right anyhow, which is pretty good for Joe Biden, that the 12th congressional district in Ohio was like the 68th most competitive seat from the Democratic perspective. So there are 67 districts that are have a more favorable political landscape. Again, just looking at the raw numbers going in than did Pat Tiberi and John Kasich's old district. So again, they didn't get to one, and that's first and foremost. But the trend lines don't look good for Republicans. And, you know, is Donald Trump going to come back? Is Vice President going to come back? Is the House Speaker going to pour in so much money into one district? You know, is all this going to happen again for November? That's a big question.
And this fall, a lot of what's going to drive turnout is what happens in the governor's race, which is going to be the one that's the most volatile and where the most money is spent. So turnout-wise, I give the Democrats a lot of credit. They did a better job turning out their people than Republicans did, but the fall is different. And I remember and made note on Wednesday, sometimes I had a candidate in 2012 in Eastern Ohio. He won the Ohio House race, state rep race, by 7 votes. 2 years later, he won it with 70% of the vote. Different elections have different turnouts, different issues going on.
And he's an incumbent.
Yes, absolutely.
So how does this fit into the big picture? There are at least 3 other Republican congressmen in Ohio who will nervously analyze these results, as Julie was mentioning. And the campaign staffs of statewide candidates are trying to figure out what O'Connor's strong showing means for their races. Janetta, again, he came close, but he didn't get over the edge. It's still a red district. This state has been trending red. It just shows you that Democrats can't just take for granted that wave is there. They got to work for it, right?
Absolutely, they have to work for it. But again, if you extrapolate the trends, I think it's going to be very positive for Democrats. So if you can mitigate your losses in the rural areas and pick up a lot of these votes in the suburban areas, which was a trend, and then turn out your base in the bluer areas, that really is a recipe for success. So I would say for the statewide candidates, governor on down, some of these congressional districts are on paper more competitive than this one, like the one CD1 in Hamilton County, where you have
Shabbat's district
Steve Shabbat
in Cincinnati.
That's right, where his Democratic opponent is outraising him already. That's another sign of enthusiasm, too. I think that we saw turnout, but we saw significant fundraising advantages by the Democratic candidates. And then I would say, thirdly, too, we have to look at state house races. So if you take what happened here in CD12 and kind of overlay them with some of the Franklin County state house districts, you can see significant pickups, I think as many as 3 and maybe even the Senate district too, if the fall returns are anything like they were here this week.
But for
What
this
I'm
fall,
curious about is whether these other districts will allow the candidate to walk the line that Balderson had to walk between Donald Trump and John Kasich. Because John Kasich is very popular right now, partly because of support from Democrats. Because of the uniqueness of this particular District 12, Balderson kind of needed to embrace both of them. He managed to do it in a way that was a little bit precarious. The very day before the election, we're asking him, well, the governor's kind of criticizing you and maybe you shouldn't have brought in the president. And all he would say was, it was an honor to stand on the stage with President Donald Trump.
Also, in the last days before the election, Darrell, he said to a fair crowd in rural parts of the district that we don't need someone from Franklin County representing this district. Now, he's later apologized for that, but how does Troy Balderson comment there play in the months ahead? I assume it's going to show up in an ad or two.
This is part of Troy Balderson's challenge, I think. Frankly, he stepped in it a few times in this campaign verbally. And they hit him very well, especially from the national media. There were many turned down interviews, and I think Senator Balderson mentioned that was part of the strategy, saying, well, they don't know the district or whatever. Danny O'Connor went every place, everywhere. Now, he paid a price for misstepping himself on Chris Matthews' hardball.
That's what he mentioned. He would have to vote for Nancy Pelosi if it came down to it.
Exactly. So is Senator Balderson going to be able to walk that line as well? Just sort of, not really talk, just sort of do the canned statements, let the ads.
He's going to be a sitting congressman. You can, as a sitting congressman, avoid conflict.
But to use a football analogy, I've heard him say in the past, the difference between the first game and how you play and what you learn and what you change to the second game says a lot. And I think Balderson and Republicans know they've got a lot of room for improvement, and the fall environment's going to be so much different. And part of it is, for governor, we have 2 candidates. One you might call vanilla, another you might call milquetoast. I won't say which one is which, but neither one of them appeal to the extreme right or the extreme left. How are you going to motivate hardcore Republicans, hardcore Democrats? How are you going to get independents excited?
Assuming that Trump motivates the Democrats, let's just assume that. What is the Republicans' message? Is it, we hear very little about this booming economy. Should they just focus on that, say it's the economy, stupid, we're low unemployment, Wall Street's doing pretty well, the economy's at 4% growth GDP. Is that going to be their message heading forward?
Well, I think that needs to be part of it, but also they've got to look at, people forget Ohio's a big state with many media markets. So certain things in Toledo that excite people might be different than in Columbus or Cincinnati. So I still think the governor's race is going to drive and motivate turnout in terms of the bases.
And I think you have to distinguish the message of the Kasich Republicans or the Trump Republicans, because there are fractures in the Republican Party, and I think that there's probably disagreement on how you talk to Ohioans. I think Kasich would argue he would know how.
I think we're disregarding one race. I think the U.S. Senate race with Sherrod Brown at the top of the ticket. That's the top Democrat in Ohio, and he's running for a 3rd term now.
But if the Democrats don't feel Sherrod is threatened, and they feel also he's gearing up to run for president in 2020, that might make things different. But I mean, Sherrod, unless the base Democrats feel he's at risk of losing, they aren't going to get quite as motivated for him.
Don't worry, he has some of the best poor mouthers since Lou Holtz on his campaign.
The football metaphors are fast and furious tonight. Speaking of football, the exciting election did one thing this week. It, for the most part, took attention away from Ohio State's investigations. The latest one, of course, involves football coach Urban Meyer and what he did or did not know about domestic abuse allegations against his receivers coach, what he did or did not do about it, and who he told about it. Late last week, Meyer admitted that he did report a 2015 allegation against assistant coach Zach Smith, something Meyer denied even knowing about a few days earlier. OSU was investigating, and leading that probe is a former federal prosecutor from New York. Terry Casey, how does this play out? This seems so murky right now. We have an investigation. We've got a Board of Trustees committee. We're on a paid administrative leave. The AD's on vacation, apparently.
Well, the question is, who's really in charge at Ohio State? Is it the trustees? Is it the administration? And whoever put out the announcement that said back then, we're going to have it all done in 2 weeks. Now the clock's ticking and there's only 10 days left. And the person they're bringing in from New York City happens to be the same very skilled person who's right in the middle of the investigation of the CBS chairman CEO. So there's a lot to be done. And I think the woman who has the accusations against her former husband, her attorney's saying she's not going to talk to anybody until everything else is solved legally. So there is a time crunch, and September 1st is when the season kicks off, and a lot of the speculation is Urban will be back on the sideline coaching the team. So we'll see, again, who's in charge and which rumors work out correct.
So is the university just buying time? Are they hoping it settles down? Because there's two audiences here. The local folks want Urban Meyer to stay, I would say. National folks, not so much. So who does OSU care more about, or do they just let the facts dictate the story?
I actually think it plays into what we were talking about previously, because some sense I got, interestingly enough, talking to voters around Ohio, is that all of this plays into this whole national mood of, you know, what's going on with Me Too, what's going on with truth versus allegations, what's going on with the institutions that we know and love that aren't exactly what they were cracked up to be under the hood. And that is spreading throughout the country. So I think that what they're doing is trying to, I think in a way, buy time. They certainly don't want to cut into their football season if they can help it. If they can wrap it up nice and quickly and act like they, did their due diligence, then I think that would be optimal.
And you do have another audience, which are the compliance folks,
Yep.
the federal government that requires certain kinds of reporting. So you're going to have to answer questions about who knew what when and how was it reported, because you do risk significant federal dollars being pulled from a university if you can't show that leaders in the university were properly reporting.
But there's a changing wind out there, partly because of the Duke University thing that happened where people were falsely charged and found out innocent. The feds are looking at changing some of those rules, because Title IX was originally about making sure the balance of men's sports and women's sports was fairly done. And now the question is, how much is a university employee responsible for what an employee does at home in off hours? And I'm not saying that to defend or say anything was right or wrong, but the federal rules are somewhat in play of where will they be in 6 months or a year.
Darryl, the university finds itself in a real mess. At the very least, it's in the middle of a very messy divorce, at the very least. At worst, it's involved with tolerating or putting up with domestic violence.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of double meaning being in the middle of a messy divorce. So literally between the former coach now and his former wife, but yeah, maybe a divorce between the university and the football coach and the athletic director and the president. Well, pick your rumor of the week.
Yeah.
I think my fellow Buckeye fans sometimes just want to put the pillow over their head, make it all go away. We just want to get that first kick off, and can we just think about football and pile this on top of all the stuff that's come out with with Dr. Strauss, the late Dr. Strauss, and the sexual abuse of the wrestling team members and 13 other sports, the diving team coach. This has not been a good few months for the Ohio State University.
So I want to ask you, I'm not going to ask you comment on this particular case, but what is the Board of Trustees, because you're a full member of the Board of Trustees at Ohio University, what is their role in this type of case in overseeing and administering, a university employee? Granted, the football coach is pretty high profile, but should that be left to the president, or should the university trustees be taking the lead role in this investigation, as they are?
The university trustees have to have a lot of faith in their president to get the answers, and they absolutely have a role in helping get those answers. And so it's not, just one person and all only on this person. It needs to be everyone. Taking very seriously the responsibility that the administration and the Board of Trustees have to students. I mean, this is a public university, and the students should be first. I know this is about sports and about coaching, but there are tens of thousands of students on this campus, and we need to make sure that there are people on the campus, leaders on the campus, that have upstanding moral character, and that's what you need to do as a university trustee, is get those answers to see if that is the case.
And the complication is that Ohio State has 15 trustees, real ones, 2 students, some national trustees. It's a complicated mess because there's so many trustees at Ohio State. Unlike when you were at Ohio University, there were only 9 trustees. It was easier for everybody to know everybody and move in one direction.
And the bottom line here, there is at least potentially a victim here, a victim of a crime, of abuse. Now again, that has gotten real muddy, and everyone at least gives lip service. Oh, sure, we want to, make sure the victim's first. Well, do we or don't we here? There seems to be a lot of talk about when can we get Urban back in the saddle, and let's get to the playoffs or whatever.
All right. Last topic. It looks like ECOT is out of the education business in Ohio. The electronic classroom of tomorrow, its last hope was the Ohio Supreme Court, but the court this week agreed with the state of Ohio that the online charter school does owe the state at least $60 million. The court said Ohio law is clear and that ECOT wrongly charged the state for students who seldom logged onto their computers. Julie Carr-Smythe, this was kind of their last hope, I think, ECOT. They've already been shuttered. They've been shuttered for about a year. Was this ruling a surprise at all?
I think it was a little bit of a surprise coming from a Republican court. The Republicans have sort of been defending the process by which the charter schools were set up in this state. However, I know that Mike DeWine, who is a Republican, had come out immediately and said, this was our case. We fought for it for 2 years. We believed that they were in the wrong and the state was in the right. And so in that sense, certainly ECOT has seen consistent defeats in the courts. They have a couple more administrative options that their lawyer's going to pursue. But what's interesting about the law is that, their interpretation was, well, there's this law that says you have to have 10 hours of learning time in order to count a school day. Well, how can you have that if you have no logs of time? Yeah. ECOT's argument has always been, yeah, but what if our kid is sick or something in a traditional public school? They still get the funding. It doesn't go up and down by the day based on whether people are there or not.
And I back up what Julie said. I mean, Mike DeWine pushed this. He won in the Supreme Court. And don't be surprised, between now and Election Day, the state attorney general's office seizes the property of the ECOT guy down in Florida. I mean, DeWine's being attacked that he didn't do enough. He's saying, I've been chasing him, and don't be surprised they seized the home down in Florida.
Democrats, Jeanette, have a different take on this?
Oh, yes, and actually Akron Beacon Journal's editorial today had a different take on it, and that is DeWine, Yost, Faber looked the other way while this was happening for years. You don't make $200 million and go buy a home in Key West overnight. I mean, this was a scam that was allowed to happen for years by people who accepted large campaign donations from the founder of this school.
But this includes 4 years when Ted Strickland was governor. It started in 06.
We tried to cut him by 70%, but the legislature wouldn't let us.
Well, the governor should have been tougher, so the arguments will go back and forth.
Yeah.
So, Darrell, this will be an issue in the campaign, but this is a tough issue to explain.
That's the hard part, and and Janelle's team is doing their best to number one. I think Central Ohio. I think most people get it here, but to get it up to the Toledos and things like that. Now, the interesting thing, if you look at Terry referred to what DeWine's going to do. He's already filed in court. He's basically buying the Democrats' arguments now that ECOT screwed the public schools, the traditional public schools. That's what the Democrats have been saying for years. The Republicans have been denying. But now in the legal arena, Mike DeWine is agreeing with them and making his whole legal argument to go after Bill Logger and even down to like the assistant bookkeeper, trying to hold them personally liable.
100 days out from an election.
We got to get to their off-the-record comments. And Janata, you're first.
Remember these three names: Mary Lightbody, Beth Liston, and Allison Russo. Those will be the three women who will be winning state house races here in the central Ohio area this fall.
They're Democrats.
When I was last here, I said there might be a 7 to 8% ticket tax coming. Well, they've cut it down to only 7%. And later this month and in September, they're going to try and jam it through. But the question is, Bill Cohen, who does a music program at $10 a piece in the basement of churches, are they going to jump in and seize 7% of the take?
I think he's nonprofit. I'm not
That
sure.
doesn't matter. They're still going to take it.
Julie.
I think you'll see the results in the Ohio 12 election really energize the governor's race, because they're going to make the case that, you know, there is no gerrymandering in the state is just the state, and they're going to try to make that case to the voters.
Will Trump supporters ever admit that he lies? He told a clear lie last Saturday night at Old and Tangy Orange. He posted a tweet mistakenly saying Steve Stivers was up for the special election. It was taken down. 2 days later, he comes, blames the media for making up that story. Just a blatant black and white lie. And I don't use that word very often, but it was clearly so, and got criticized for using it. Look at the truth, folks. Can we do that?
All right. Congratulations to the Cleveland Browns. They have continued their undefeated ways in the preseason. They are now 5-0 in their last preseason games. We'll see if they continue it in the regular games. That's Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, Twitter, Facebook, and WOSU.org. I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.